Hello.
Hey Michael, how are you?
Great, great.
Do you remember me from
Yes.
uh, awesome, awesome. I know you for sure. Hey, listen, just a quick comment. I Last week I was interviewing for Apollo GraphQL, and do you work for Apollo?
No, I don't work. Work for Chill.
Ah, okay, okay, yeah. Trying to get in there, do some, what is it, solution engineering SE for Apollo. But anyway, long
Yeah.
story. Trying to get more involved in GraphQL. I just got out of the OpenAPI tech meeting with some of my folks. We're getting ready to release 3.21. It's coming up soon, so you didn't hear from me, and hopefully
Yeah.
you're getting ready. We're working on 3.3 maybe in the fall. Good stuff coming. Not a lot, but it's very interesting. So now I'm here to hear what you guys come up with and all this AI stuff.
But yeah, actually the wrong working group, right? We have the GraphQL AI working group
I know, I
that has
know.
the AI stuff.
Hey, but this is not boring. It's still GraphQL, man. Because if that
Yeah,
one
it's
doesn't
still
work,
GraphQL.
this one doesn't work.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
very important dependency here.
Hi,
Anyway,
Benji.
hey Benji.
Hey folks.
Hey folks.
So,
Benji, how's the temperature in the UK?
Oh, it's not so bad right now. It's, only 27.5 degrees, which is,
Ah, nice.
reasonably comfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
It's incredible.
How's it where you are?
Odd.
I don't
You,
know. I have 20, 23, 24 degrees inside, so,
no, he has air conditioning. I have just looked. It's 30 degrees.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
function
no.
above 27 degrees. Like it's just like just a beep in my head.
I think I'm good for another half a degree or so, and that's when everything starts to collapse. So yeah, I'm operating at like just below peak at the moment. But there's some clouds in the sky, which is very welcome.
Really, it's
Uh,
that beating sun that gets you.
Hmm.
Got to stay in the shade.
yep.
Totally.
Even in San Francisco, like the last couple of weeks, I mean, it only gets so hot in San Francisco, but very unseasonably warm. You're outside for a while and you're just like, sweat.
so 24 or just 23 degrees?
In San
Because
Francisco,
there is no hot in San Francisco. Every time I'm there, it's basically in the
Same temperature.
same temperature.
let's see. Last week it hit, I think 28.
Really? 28 degrees?
Yeah, maybe higher, maybe 29. Which is pretty warm for San Francisco.
It's just always perfect weather in San Francisco.
So
So
82 Fahrenheit?
Yeah,
82 Fahrenheit? Okay. Wait.
yeah, maybe a little
Oh,
higher.
holy
Yeah, one day
shit.
it got to like 85 Fahrenheit, which I guess is 29.
I mean, the one advantage you have in the US is that everywhere you have air conditioning. Like in
Yep.
Europe, we are totally not prepared for these temperatures.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why when it happens in San Francisco, it's like it sounds like we're all weaklings who like, well, it hit 28 degrees. That's because there's no Celsius or there's no air conditioning here. Because it's like, why would you have air conditioning? You're gonna have air conditioning for the 2 weeks a year that it's warm. Like that's silly until it's warm and you're like, no. Everyone's inside their little stacked, vertical stacked houses and the top floor just melting.
Nice.
That's just how it goes.
Um,
Um, all right, friends. It looks like we've got a full house. We've got a relatively short attendee list. Do we have everyone on our attendee list? Pascal, I don't see you on our agenda file.
The merge process
Is the
is
merge process screwed?
Yeah,
Miguel, I
I
don't
will
see you on there
also,
like
either.
4 PRs that are.
Oh my gosh. All right.
I will also blame the
Let's
merge.
get all those PRs merged.
yeah, I did.
Why is my... All right, if anyone is able to merge them, go for it, because my GitHub is just being unruly right now. It's making me log back in again.
You'd think Easy CLA would recognize me by now, but every time it has to go and check the list.
We should just replace Easy CLA with like a 2 generation old AI model and it would do better. Just like, here's a folder full of documents that have been signed. Here's the pull request.
Yep.
Does it look good to you?
I
Actually, not
wanted,
even that. We should just...
I wanted to sneakily add myself to the agenda of Mark to the pull request.
Sorry, I got to that one too fast.
And then Lee just merged it in. Okay, I will create a new pull request.
Whoops. That is sneaky. Woo. All right, Miguel, you might have to sign some stuff, but I'll get you merged once that's done. No rush. Um, in the meantime, let's kick things off. Hello everybody. We are well past 5 minutes into the half hour, which means we're late because 5 minutes is usually when we get going. All being here, we agree to the spec membership agreement, participation guidelines, contribution guide, and code of conduct. I'm gonna paste. Whoop, unless it's already in there. Ah, Martin beat me to it. That's the agenda file. They're all listed there at the top. We always get started with a introduction of attendees to get names to faces and making sure that all of our microphones work and that we're paying attention. We will go down the list as it is listed in the attendee list, and then anyone not there yet, we can just hop in at the end. And there's me at the top, so I'll go first. Hello, everybody. My name is Lee.
Hi, everybody. My name is Martin from Apollo.
Hey folks, I'm Benji from GraphQL.
Hey, Benoit from Apollo.
Hi, Michael from Chili Cream.
Hey, Mark from Yelp.
I am Matt from Meta.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeff from Apollo.
Hey, I'm Pascal from Chili Cream.
Yeah, hi, everybody. My name is Miguel Quintero, and I am looking for something to do.
Great.
We'll
Great
get you
place.
busy.
He has so much to do.
Love
Hey,
that.
man, I don't mind a role in Apollo. That'll be great. REST APIs, GraphQL, why not, man? Graphs are awesome.
Yeah, there's 144 open issues on the GraphQL spec repository.
Let's go. Let's go.
Let's go. Welcome, Miguel.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Glad that everyone's microphones are working well. Let's do a quick read through of our agenda. Not a super long one. This time we have a handful of things. Benji is going to give us a GraphQL over HTTP spec update. We have our automated agenda item reminder that we have a spec release cut coming up. I think we're slightly behind, but what we should be doing right now is dotting our I's and crossing our T's on any changes that have happened over the last 12 months into the spec, and making sure that we have something ready to cut. So we're gonna, as a reminder, we're doing annual cuts of the spec going forward. And what we should be doing, it says, is reviewing and approving a changelog, which we don't have yet, but we will have a changelog before the next meeting. We have some grant initiatives. Benji will, I'm sure we'll talk about that soon. Then we're going to talk about GraphQL taglines, on era and schemaless clients, the query verb in HTTP, and renaming composite schema spec. That should probably keep us busy, but is there anything else not listed on the agenda that anyone would like to make sure we talk about today? Coolly. Okay, that's our plan. So let's get things kicked off with GraphQL over HTTP. Benji, I'll leave it to you to kick us off.
Awesome. Yeah, so GraphQL over HTTP, we brought it to the working group last month to basically say we were hoping to do a cut this month. There was a few final little edits to go through. We've made all of those edits but one. One of the things that we've done that wasn't anticipated is also we've updated all of the links to the IETF RFCs, so they're properly like titled rather than just RFC number. They're now stated in full, which is good. The one that we have not yet merged, which has a minor semantic change, is the change from recommended to should, which I've linked into the main chat. Martin and myself are abstaining from voting on this. But what I've done is I've gone through and there's a number of approvals on it already, by the way. I've gone through and where I didn't think we should be saying should, but I was happy saying recommended. So for example, we recommend that you use /GraphQL, but I wouldn't say that you should use /GraphQL. Like if you wanted to use a different endpoint, that's totally fine. That's not going to cause compatibility issues or anything. So in those cases, I've tried to find alternative wordings, like a common convention is to use /GraphQL, and other such things. There are a few places where the use of should makes the wording a little bit more awkward, but I've done my best to try and make that as good as possible. So I hand this over to the working group saying merge or not. Either way, let's ship this specification. I think it's good to go.
Nice. I'm gonna, just for posterity, edit our agenda to get a link to this.
In the chat, should we use should?
I'm a big fan of the word should. Yeah, I don't like nuance in spec docs.
One of the other things that I did is I've split a couple of the sentences with like semicolons. So for example, we said that a client must indicate the media type that it supports using the accept header as specified in this RFC, which sounded like the requirement to do that was specified in that RFC, but it's not. What we meant was the accept header is specified over here, and we require that you use it. So I separated those up with semicolons to make that clearer. There's a few other subtle, very minor changes like that, which I don't think will impact any of our existing implementations, but make the text clearer.
Nice. Okay, I'll take a quick read over this, but just having scanned it quickly, I like this change. I think it's good. and especially like the making the common convention change away from recommended. It's good to kind of like split which of these are, it would be good if you did this kind of thing versus like you really should do this kind of thing. So that's a nice change. I like it. Okay. Action for folks to go read through that, add comments, give it a thumbs up if you think the change is good. And we will continue into grant program. Benji, I'll let you take this since you have been actually who's
Martin,
on
I'll hand
top?
it over to
Martin.
you.
Martin
Be,
is on top
be,
of grants
be,
now.
before we move on grants, like, can we afford one more month on GraphQL over HTTP? Like, if we want to release in September, like we have to decide quite soon, right? If we want to do the should change.
Yeah, ideally this would be landed in the next couple days, and then we can start that 45-day countdown. So anyone who has an opinion on this, go whack your +1 on it. Or your -1. I don't mind either way.
How do we decide that? Like, if there is a majority of TSC by, let's say, 15th of August, then we merge it, and if not, we discard it.
We are talking just about this should change, right?
Yeah, should we use should? Must we use should?
It's a common convention to end the path. Okay. It's a bit wordy, right? What did we don't like
yeah.
about recommended, by the way?
So essentially the issue is RFC 2119, which defines how the IETF uses words like recommended and should are equivalent, must and required are equivalent, may and
Okay.
I forget what the other one is. So essentially they are equivalent, and Lee would prefer that we just use one set of words, like we just use should and must and may, and we don't use recommended or required.
Okay.
Which
Yeah,
is, it's a reasonable ask, I think.
Yeah, just like shortening the set of grammars that we use. Basically, like the way that I approach this in other docs is like use the canonical ones unless putting it in the word in the sentence reads awkwardly, like the English doesn't work. In which case, then you use the alternatives because it makes the prose actually legible. Otherwise, you stick with the primaries. Because otherwise, you get into this weird thing of like, are they actually equivalent, or is one weaker or stronger than the other? And it's like that's the whole kind of point, is to avoid that kind of stuff. And especially since you actually caught a couple, right? Like the slash GraphQL endpoint was intended to be more of like a description of a common convention as opposed to an actual should. Yeah, my thought is usually it helps clarify those kinds of things.
Yeah, I see this as a bug in RFC 2119, by the way. I think the recommended is correct and that should is not.
Oh, interesting.
Like recommended is basically saying, here's what we'd recommend that you do, but if you know of a good reason why not to do that, you do your thing. Whereas should is saying, no, you should have done that. Like, yeah, you can do something else, but whatever you're doing is wrong. You should have done this. And that's not really, if you read RFC 2119, that's not really what it's saying. It's literally saying your default behavior should be this, but if you have a better reason or a good reason not to. So for me, the recommended is actually the stronger, more accurate term, and the should is actually misleading, which is mostly why I've been giving some pushback on this.
Yeah, that's fair.
What's our conclusion there? How long do we allow? How long do we take to make that decision?
Honestly, I think you and I are not voting against this. So if everyone else agrees we should have it, like, let's just merge it. Unless someone is actively opposed to it, I think just merge it. We can always change those shoulds back to recommended without changing the meaning of the spec anyway, as required by RFC 2119. This itself does change the meaning because it does remove some of those terms. But we can do that now.
Yeah, it also fixes some of the RFC references.
Works for
which
me.
seems important to get those right.
Should we get this one through first and then do a TSC vote on the spec? Or
Yeah, the spec itself, like ratifying the spec requires a TSC vote. I don't think we need a TSC vote on this particular PR. I'm going through the other comments now. In the spirit of getting it merged quickly, let's just get it done now. Okay, I have one actionable comment on this PR, and the rest all looks super good, which is Alf actually already commented, and I basically just plus one that I thought that it was correct. There's, was that line 356, 357, talking about the extensions object, which they mentioned this that felt like a regression, not intentionally recommending or shoulding updating the extensions object. That one should probably read as a recommended or should. Either or choice is totally fine. So maybe that one is just to go back to the copy that was there before.
I'd challenge that because
okay,
I think
yeah,
using
let's challenge
headers
it.
is fine.
Me too, because if we allow people to put top level properties there, then every change we do with top level properties will be breaking changes.
Do we want to
that's
then
not
recommend
what's being
something else?
discussed here.
Because I think if we want to do it via other means, then we should provide our strongly suggested other mean. Like, you don't have to do the one that we recommend, but like we say you must. That one also should probably be a must not, or maybe must.
Why do you say it's not what's discussed, Benji?
Okay, so there's two things here, right? One is that we're saying that you must not, and we're not saying that using those words, but you must not add any other top level properties to the object. That is established both in the before and after text. So that's already the case. Previously, we then said we recommend, and was it recommend? Yeah, we recommend that you add them into the extensions object. But now we're just saying do it some other way. For example, you could add it to extensions. The other example would be, of course, using headers. And it's generally okay to like add extra stuff in headers. You might add like an authorization header. That's perfectly reasonable thing to do. And I wouldn't say that you should not have added it to a header. So that's why I kind of down leveled that. Like extensions is one way of doing it, but it's not the only way, and it's not necessarily the best way, depending on what piece of information you're trying to transfer. Whether it's basically GraphQL related information or whether it's request level information, for example.
Do we want to provide two recommendations and then provide guidance? Because I don't know, this is like the gray area of spec writing of like when you say that you must not do something, either you open the Wild West to any other option you want, or you say like, here's the preferred, like if you are in a situation where you do need to add something, you do it, usually you do it this way. And it doesn't mean that that's their hard requirement to do it. So the other thing is I do think we should probably frame that as a must not. Like we should be clear about what you must not do rather than saying you must do something else. And you're like, what does that mean I'm not allowed to do? I want to be very clear about what we're not allowed to do. And I think that's just adding additional top level properties, right? Okay, that's the one little section that I think probably needs a tweaky. The rest of it all looks super nice. So either if you want, you can just like delete that change, merge this, and then kind of come back to clarifying that one little section. In which case we can do that offline and get it merged pretty quickly, I think. But yeah, I think being clear about what you can't do and then being clear about what our recommended approach is in the scenario where you need to do that. And we can say, either a header or an extension entry are the two common ways to do that. And we don't have to go into too much detail about why you would pick one versus the other, but that would probably be the most clear thing to do. What do you guys think?
Yeah, sounds reasonable.
I like.
What I'll probably do is just try and get those. Either we just merge this as is, or I'll try and get those edits into this pull request like later this evening.
Yeah.
I'm happy just merging this as is and then doing that as a follow-up change, because then at least it's in more of the final state earlier. But either way.
Okay. All right, I made sure to formally approve it in the thing. Yeah, you're welcome to just merge this one as is and take the feedback as follow-ups, or if it's an easy edit and you want to do that before, go for it. You got my blessing. Okay, very exciting. Let's hop to GraphQL tagline. Martin, this is yours.
Yes, I'll go back quickly to the grants. We have grants available.
Thank you.
We have 3 grants going on right now. I actually invited Alec to this primary working group, but he couldn't do it. He's doing a lot of progress on the tutorials front. So hopefully he can join the next one. But if you have tutorials you want to do, please reach out to him. Like, he can show you how to do it and everything. Like, it's forgot what inspired these tutorials, but it's interactive tutorials. So he's doing it for Houdini, but the plan is to have it for other GraphQL stacks and other GraphQL things. Also planning on the grant front to make another call for project. We have 13K left in the budget for the end of the year, and we still have a few months remaining. So I'll start a new call for project for September, like for back to school. So if you or anyone you know is interested with helping with GraphQL, always a good time. I think that's it for grant, unless anyone has questions. No questions. I'll move to what was your tagline? Yes. Where is the pull request? It's a one line change to the website to make us the language for AI. It was actually suggested by Jeff in the discussion we had. I just opened the pull request. Looks like a lot of people like it. I don't think anyone blocked it. So let's merge it if everyone's okay.
You might want to do a quick search for other places the tagline appears.
Oh, yes.
Otherwise, I like it.
In the GraphQL spec repository, for example.
Yeah, we should do like a wide search. We obviously don't have to hit. Well, I mean, this PR should hit all the ones in this repo, but yeah, once we've got a tagline updated, we should get it updated everywhere. The only other one that I found was the title, which is important because that one is picked up as meta tags for any shares and stuff like that.
Yes.
The tagline is also in the about description of the GraphQL spec on GitHub.
Nice. If someone wants to do a follow-up for that one, we'll make sure we get that one into the next cut. I like it.
Actually, that was wrong. I don't know where it is. But Google indexed it like this, so it's weird.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at all the places right now. I won't be able to find them all in the next 30 seconds. What I can do is do that async and then merge. If that's okay with everyone. Or we can do it together. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, you're unblocked. As soon as you feel like you got the PR in a good spot, you're good to merge it.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks for doing that. Okay, next we've got some updates on error null and schemaless clients. Benji, take us off.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so I've been thinking about the on error null proposal more. I've been basically updating the RFCs and the blog post that I wrote like actually 2 years ago now, which we haven't shipped yet. So I've brought that up to date with what we're now proposing, which is actually subtly different than what we had 2 years ago, which you'd expect as we evolve these things. And one of the things that I realized is that what on error null allows us to do is to move error propagation from the server to the client. That's one of the big things that it offers to us. And this then means that your normalized caches are now safe to store even when errors happen. It like unlocks a huge amount of it makes the request a lot safer than it was before. It's much easier to cache, much more reliable, which is great. But at the moment, it's great primarily for clients that already understand the schema, so like the relays of the world. For clients that don't know what the schema is, like Apollo client, Urkel, etc., it doesn't give you that for free. You now need to teach your client about the schema, or you need to force your client to adopt a new error handling strategy out of the box before the client can get this safety. And what we really want is to allow these normalized caches to be safe without impacting application code. We've got kind of two things that we're moving towards here, right? One is fixing that problem with normalized caches, and one is giving people new and better ways to handle errors so that we can live up to that like promise of partial success that GraphQL kind of launched with, but no one's really made really good use of because it's just too hard to correlate the errors in the data. So we want to solve both of those problems. And for clients that don't know about the schema, we can't do that safely because they don't know where that error should have been thrown. So essentially what I'm proposing is a very small addition to errors, which is a path non-null property. So essentially alongside path, where you have the list of the path components leading up to it, the strings and numeric indices that tell you the aliases and the numbers within the lists, you also have then another array of Booleans. There's other ways of doing this, right? We could give like the indices that were non-null. We could make it so that the path itself was a list of strings and we put a bang on the end of any of them that are non-null. So there's a number of different options. I think the list of Booleans is the simplest. But what this now means is that a client that does not know what the schema is can still turn off error propagation on the server side and reproduce that error propagation locally. Which essentially means we can unlock this fix to normalize caches without breaking user applications. Like theoretically, we could release this in a patch release of the software, and it wouldn't have any negative application impact for a very small change to errors. And I think also errors are, obviously not part of the happy path. The happy path doesn't have any errors, so they won't impact that. And when you've got a partial success with a number of errors, adding a list of Booleans doesn't really add much to the network. So I don't think there's a big hesitation to add that personally.
But I mean, these old clients can still use the old behavior, right? You're just arguing if these clients like Urkel want to opt into the new behavior, you would need to give them a hint how to execute the propagation.
Yes. So I'm trying to be careful to separate clients and applications here. So yes, if Urkel wants to enable this, and I don't think that decision should be dependent on what the application wants at all. If Urkel wants to enable this by default, it should be able to ship it in a patch release, turn it on if it knows that the server supports this, and it should have no consequences for the application. All it should do other than fixing the normalized cache, essentially, when errors occur.
But you don't think like Urkel could also go like there are multiple ways such a client could do that, right? It's either stay on the old error behavior and get it propagated by the server. I mean, we are not taking this away, right?
We're not taking that away, but we are going to encourage all clients not to use that as much as possible. And the reason is, if you do propagation on the server side, you cannot put into your normalized cache any response that includes any errors whatsoever. So suddenly all of those things are non-cacheable.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. The main reason why we want this in other clients is because we want to stop the fragment bleeding, right? Where you have two co-located fragments that basically bleed errors into one another. Like a client that does not have any schema and type knowledge, do they even have this problem?
Yeah, so you're talking about a slightly different problem that this also solves. But essentially, there is the normalized cache issue, which is if there is an error in the response, you cannot safely write to a normalized cache because you would be like writing null potentially over the top of a bunch of stuff that previously was populated, which would, if you're then rendering from your normalized cache, it's going to throw away parts of your UI, which may or may not be relevant. That doesn't require fragments. You can do all of that with just queries and face those issues without fragments. In addition to that, yes, if you're using fragments, then by not doing error propagation on the server side, your client can give you the result of a fragment with or without error propagation, without it being impacted by the error propagation of another fragment. But that's a separate concern, but definitely related. Like basically, we want all clients, ideally, in 5 years' time, all clients should be issuing on error null. All of them. And reproducing the existing behavior locally for a client like that should be really easy to do.
How are we going to get, this has always been the big open question of this, is like, how do we get to a good default state? Because my worry is that like we build this mechanism and then like most users of these client tools don't remember to enable it. And then we very, very, very slowly end up working our way out of the hole. Yeah, what should we do?
So this is what the motivation for this specific change is, right? The motivation for this is every client, Core, Apollo client, Relay, all of them, if they can tell that the server supports on error, which is, again, service capabilities is the handler for that, they should just be able to turn this on without even telling application developers. So then we just put in the golden path, you turn this feature on. Application developers don't even need to know if we have this. But there's a bunch of people with their hands up. So Matt, Mark, Michael, I think.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. One of the things, like, from a first principles, what we're doing is essentially shipping in the error a micro AST of, like, in terms of like relays compiled into the JavaScript ASTs, like their reader ASTs, which is interesting because now we are actually providing, but only for this error case, like an understanding of the schema, which I'm not opposed to. I don't think that that's wrong. I think that this isn't probably the quickest path to get out of this. There's like a longer term, do we need a way for servers to respond with ASTs? Like, is there more information that is encoded in schema plus operation that, like, we will need over time? I think, yeah, we've internally at Meta, we've never successfully built, we've tried and never successfully built a client that does not need, like, compiled or included at build time ASTs. So that's just like,
yeah, I mean, a lot of clients exist out in the wild that don't have compiled ASTs, though, right?
Yeah.
So
well, we have
maybe there's like a spectrum of
we have
dumbest.
clients in production in old versions of, say, I don't know, Instagram or WhatsApp, that don't have compiled ASTs, and we over time were like, wait, this doesn't work. But that's neither here nor there. That's just like this pattern of adding information when you need it in order to have a client feature, we might see becoming more common. If so, there's like something there. It might need to, the equivalent, like what we're doing, we might need to, maybe in the Golden Path working group or something, like figure out a generalizable pattern for, like,
yeah.
Mark?
Go on, Mark.
Yeah. So to Lee's point of, we can do all this work and then it's actually going to be used anywhere. I'm trying to think through the implications of what this is going to mean for schema authors in terms of changing their existing nullability markers, and relying more on sort of semantic nullability, and then being able to update the type generation and get rid of all the the if else's in client code, and then kind of laid on top of that, if there's like paved paths we can put people on in terms of migrating, if any, for whatever migrations are necessary, and kind of helping go through that. Sort of giving a bit of frontline assistance to folks wanting to use this for existing legacy applications. Maybe that has to be sort of client specific, but that's kind of where my brain just went to that right now, because I know we have like a heckload of usage of of all this like if else checking in the client. So yeah,
I mean, from the relay side, right? There is a super good upgrade path from a null schema to a strongly typed schema, because you can basically opt into the new error mode. Then you still print for relay the semantic non-null schema, and then you can change your actual schema to the stronger typing. So just for relay, you print this semantic non-null schema. That's actually what we did in Hot Chocolate, and it works like super good to upgrade in that path. Depends on other schemas. If they don't support semantic non-null, then it might be more difficult. But one thing like that I think changed a bit in the perspective that we or at least how Benji framed is like we are pushing this now as a default behavior. As like in my mental state, it didn't have to be a default behavior. Like smarter clients could opt into this, right? As opposed to like this, not everybody has to use this new behavior. You could still, because there's tons of old clients out there that expect the default behavior of the server to be like it was in 2025, right? So,
just to be clear, I'm saying that the clients, new releases of Urkel of Apollo client should default to opting in. They should default to opting into this behavior.
Okay, I agree. That's a good idea. I just worried we are switching like the server default flag, and then it would be problematic.
Yeah, on that note, I would propose that we can do that in future, but it would be only on new services. So a GraphQL request, as it's defined in the spec, obviously has like the schema as part of it, along with like the document and the operation name and the variables and whatnot. And the error behavior, the on error, is now part of that GraphQL request, which is, abstract. What you then expose through HTTP, for example, obviously you don't pass the schema through HTTP, like you use the endpoint to give it to you. If you're using trusted documents, you don't even give the document, you give a hash that represents it. And similarly, like you can change what the default of.
Okay.
Then
I
has.
think there's an.
Oh, sorry,
you
is
were
there
interrupted.
Oh, yeah. My bad. Yeah, I had that issue earlier as well. Yes, so essentially you can have like a /GraphQL2 that has on error null as the default on that endpoint because it's encapsulated as part of the GraphQL request rather than the GraphQL over HTTP request, which are, obviously two different things. But that any change of the default error behavior of a schema is a breaking change, no matter which direction you go. So you choose when you create your service what the error behavior will be, and then it's up to clients to then opt into alternatives. So all of this is like a multi-pronged attack to try and move us to a future where errors are better handled. But I think one of the important things at the moment, my understanding of everything at the moment is that I don't see error propagation ever completely going away, certainly by default. I was talking about this with Martin earlier, and essentially when you have there's a number of different ways that you can handle errors, right? One is to handle them by doing like throw on error. But if you do throwing, then it's kind of exceptional, right? And it like now it's got the potential of breaking your application if you don't have the try catches or the error boundaries. Another way is to do it with like the result type. But if you do a result type at the root level when you haven't got any further deeper error boundaries, then now you've essentially got rid of partial success. So I think there's always going to be, until we can essentially like really kind of force and encourage users to do some sensible error handling, I think error propagation is always going to be the default behavior. So the main push for this is to move that default error propagation behavior from the server to the client. The application still sees it exactly the same, right? They're still talking to a service. In this case, it's the client rather than the server that implements this behavior. But we've moved the problem on a step. And now the client can, bit by bit, through like directives, say, oh, when I read this fragment, I want to use a result type here. And now I don't need you to do the old style of error handling. And you can handle it on literally a fragment by fragment basis across your entire application. And you can move to it only on the screens that matter, or you can move your entire application over to it as you want. I think it just gives us a huge amount more capability in these regards.
Error propagation is not required for fragment collocation clients, right? Like if you have Relay or any other client that is doing error boundaries at the fragment level, like you can handle the errors there, right?
Yeah, you can handle errors there. You can do, for example, throw an error, which is again, you'd have to handle via exceptions. You could do a result type, or you can do error propagation. All of these have different trade-offs, right? Throwing means you now have try catch. A result type means you definitely like have branching now, and error propagation means you've got ambiguous nulls. They're all trade-offs, and it's up to you as the developer or as the person who configures the client to decide which of those you use. And one of the great things about moving this problem to the client is you can decide that on a per component basis, which I think is really cool.
So we're giving users a choice. Giving people a choice is trade-off, right? It's a good and a bad thing. It means we give them the choice to not collocate the fragments. It means also we have to educate around those choices. Part of the reason I see GraphQL being so successful around me is because it comes bundled with everything. Like you don't have to choose your ID, you have graphical, you have introspection. Like a lot of the GraphQL defaults are really, really good. And this feels like we are adding complexity to GraphQL. Like if we want people to, let's put it this way, if we want people to really adopt fragment collocation, and if we believe in that future, then also saying at the same time, you may also use these other things weakens that message a lot. Yeah, all I had to say.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But I do want to say that like GraphQL isn't a monoculture, and I think it gets a lot of benefit from not being a monoculture. So saying that you have these choices which way this is handled, I'm not saying that we need to say that every client exposes like all three different ways of handling errors. I'm saying every client can make that choice for the user. If you're using like Benji's GraphQL client, it's going to do throw an error. Everything's going to be throw an error. You don't get any choice. That's what you get. And we just tell you when you're building your application, make sure that you have error boundaries. Put error boundaries in your components, handle it in the right place. It's really easy to do that in like a React tree. Really simple, straightforward, easy, done. But there are many people who quite rightly don't like exceptions being used in this way. And for them, they might prefer result types. So maybe they'll use Jordan's GraphQL client, and Jordan's one might use result types, for example, which then gives you that kind of branching of render this way if it was successful and this way if it wasn't. That doesn't mean that we're necessarily giving the user that choice. We're giving the clients that choice. And I think giving the clients the flexibility to do those things the most important thing at the end of the day is to make sure that people are at least like handling these errors. So I think we shouldn't mandate that you use exceptions or mandate that you use result types or whatever other approaches. I think we should leave the space open to innovation.
The users and the client developers, though, are often the same. I mean, not the same people, but users will see that new property, like 100%. It's not only for client developers. If you have something that says pass non-null in the response, like 99% of the users, like the developers doing GraphQL, front-end developers, they will open, at some point in their GraphQL journey, they will open a GraphQL inspector or like their network tools, and they will see this. So they will also be impacted by this.
Yeah, getting the graphical tool to line up to what your client expects, making sure that the behavior's not surprising. It's important.
Yeah, it's also
good question in chat too about like LLMs that are just hitting HTTP endpoints directly, like wouldn't need to be aware of this, or setting a good default there would be important too.
I mean, we don't really care whether the language model uses on-error null or on-error propagate. It's really down to it. If it depends how the language model wants to handle partial success,
Language
really,
model
right?
probably just will ignore it. Like it'll do the simplest possible thing, which is I'm sending this GraphQL query to this endpoint and getting something back. Unless it's like it's given a skill and told how to use the endpoint in some way, which we could do that too. But then it's like,
but I don't think that really matters. This primarily matters, I think, when building applications, like when presenting user interfaces to people, like which widget is where the error stops, that kind of thing.
I wonder if is a potential path out of this to not have a firm requirement for the default behavior of on-error? Like we could have a should, the default behavior for the omission of on-error should be null, unless you have old clients that you are managing, in which case, historically, this is how this behavior worked when not submitted to. And by the way, if you like encounter a service that doesn't know about this, it's likely what you'll encounter. I wonder if there's something that we can do like that. Like basically attempt to be a little bit more forceful in how the execution engine behaves. Obviously, like how we set this up on the server really matters. Like we want to make sure that when you upgrade to version whatever of GraphQL Java or what have you, that you are not surprised and accidentally ship a breaking change to your clients. But if we had some way to provide some tools for folks that's like, you can tell the difference between an old client and the new client, and like here's your seam for doing that, and therefore new clients automatically get our preferred behavior and old clients don't. Or I'm a new startup and I'm like hitting git init right now, and I'm like never have to think about this problem at all. Like I just install the software and the right thing happens, and my clients never need to think about it. Figuring out how we can like find the right line between being just aggressive enough to push what we now believe is the right path without accidentally breaking a bunch of people in the process. I think that's what we have to figure out how to do. There's like two problems there then, right? One is like, how do you write the spec text in a way that is not breaking? And I think we can probably do it with a should. And then the other is for service implementations. How do you roll this out in a way that gives them the appropriate tools such that like maybe if it's a minor version change that adopts new spec stuff, it doesn't do this yet. The next major version changes the default and tells users like, hey, breaking in version 10 is the on-error behavior has now changed to the new default. If you still support older clients, you should probably configure this. something like that?
I think honestly, just leaving it as client opt-in means like by default, we keep propagation by default. New clients, new Urkel, new Apollo client, new Relay, they should all obviously check the service capabilities and see if the service supports it. And if it does, they should all just say on error null. And then the problem goes away because the application, Urkel don't even need to tell its users that they've turned that on because it should have no impact to the application. So I think we can do it completely non-breaking by making it a client prerogative. And then the should for the client is going to come from the golden path. It's not a spec requirement. It's more of a like, if you want to build your client so that your users get the best experience, here's the settings you should enable. Pascal.
So I think there's one very important point in all of this is that once this is final, or we essentially once we ship it, there shouldn't be any change to it. Like never, ideally. Because like the whole nullability discussion goes on for years now, right? And it's good because we actually landed a very, very good solution. But there were also like 3 or 4 different solutions on the way, which we were very vocal about. So I think if we like land something now, it should be in a way that it's not going to change anytime in the future, unless like we have to break it. But the problem is like if we now go out and we say that we've merged it now and in 2 years it's going to be the default, then we confuse people again. Like we should go out and say this is how it's going to behave. And ideally, like it's no change for you. And if you use a smart client, then everything will do it will happen automatically. But I think it's very important that we do not confuse people even more, because like there is if you follow the nullability specifications evolution, then you're already a bit confused, at least about what's now going to be the state that it's released. That said, about the opt-in on error, second thought. I mean, there's many examples where we decided to have the objectively better solution be a specific opt-in. For example, HTTP and HTTPS. Like everyone is using HTTPS now, but and no one is using HTTP, but technically it's still, something that has to be added in every URL that you visit. So I guess having the opt-in as is an option. It's just we should not change it somewhere in the future once it's released.
So I strongly agree with this. And it's one of the reasons that originally I wanted to launch service capabilities and on error together, because essentially when you find out whether the service supports on error or not, at that same moment, you also find out what the default error behavior for that was. Originally, I proposed that through like introspection results with like a directive, and then we did service capabilities, and now I've kind of split them out into separate concerns. But essentially, at the moment, if we do, so I've split, incidentally, I've split service capabilities and on error. They're now separate proposals, but with the essential requirement that whichever one gets merged second should get additional text added to it, which is essentially imagining that on error goes out first, on error goes out, but you have to talk to your engineers to find out that that's supported, right? Then service capabilities comes out. When that launches, it should say A, on error is supported, and B, here's my default on error behavior. And that then allows new services, greenfield services, to launch with a different error behavior if you want, which then means that clients don't need to include that in the request. And they can read that from the service capabilities, and there should be like a guarantee that that's not going to change. Like this service will forever both either support on error or not, and also here's the error behavior. And it might well be that, for example, you launch a new one and you say the error behavior is null on error, and you can't change it. That's all we're doing. We're only doing this one behavior. And you can do that through service capabilities because it's a new greenfield thing. So yeah, I fully agree with that, Pascal, and that's basically the plan for that now.
But it still means leaving a service default behavior, if not provided, of propagation, despite the fact that nobody suggests that that would actually be the thing that you would want.
I don't know. It served us all right for 11 years. I think
we've never complained about it.
The thing is, like, it really matters when you're building an application, right? That you handle the errors well and that you raise them to the user in the right places. That's and that fair. You don't blow everything up. But for a number of use cases, it really doesn't matter. For all your command line scripts, like, they are either doing something like, if an error happens, just it's an error, don't do anything, or an error happens, I don't care. I only care about the bits of data that I can retrieve. And for them, error propagation is perfectly fine. Like it already handles that stuff fine. So I think that it matters really strongly for certain use cases of GraphQL, which, to be honest, is the majority of use cases, but it also doesn't matter very much for a number of other use cases. And I don't think that having propagation remain the default in the spec is a problem. But equally, we can just say, like, we recommend if you're building a new service that you use this one. But if you're just building software for an existing service, you should stick with propagate because that's what it's always been. And again, this is services what the golden path is for.
Do we want to give services the ability to change the default? Like, is it a hard requirement that if on error is not provided, then it must be set to this value of propagate?
Well, it could just be in the spec text as it's currently written, it talks about the default error behavior, which is recommended to be propagate.
I see. So that opens the potential for a service to say, I have disregarded this recommendation and I have made my default behavior, if not provided, null.
Is it worth doing that? Right? Like it could always be an opt-in, like a request opt-in, because two GraphQL servers then might not have the same default behavior, and that could be confusing.
Also, the same GraphQL server at different point in time could not have the same default behavior.
Yeah, that's a definitely breaking change to change that default.
Yeah, never, ever change the default. Never, ever. Like, you should never change that default.
Yeah, but I'm even
like as you're pointing to different services. Like if you're, I don't know, it's tricky.
I would just keep the default for GraphQL and just say this is an error behavior. Like a smart client can opt into that, and then we have no trouble with this, right?
Yeah. Like maybe we should have a requirement instead of suggestion for the default behavior.
What's the benefit? I mean, that sounds like it sounds maybe a bit stupid now, but what's the benefit if I just write a query if this would be on? Like if it's not propagating, like.
You could have just null explosions depending on the client that you have, right? You have a Java client that serializes null in a non-null place.
No, I'm not meaning in a client. I'm meaning like if I open it in, for example, Nitro, and I make a request without setting the setting. Like if I just make a GraphQL request, or as you said, Benji, if you just make a GraphQL request from the CLI with curl or whatever, or an LLM makes a request, like what's the benefit of on error null in this case? Like, is there really a benefit in these cases?
The only benefit right, is essentially you get to avoid having those, whatever it is, like 12 bytes, 16 bytes uncompressed, which is probably like 4 bytes compressed, when you're doing every single request in future. If you know that all of your clients are Relay, Apollo client, Urkel, whatever else, GraphQL, and they all use on error null, then every single request has on error null for basically no good reason. But they all also have HTTP / 2.0 or whatever. They all have this header, they all have that header. So it's just another few dead bytes. And essentially, there's an argument there that like in 20 years time, when all clients do this, we don't necessarily want those dead bytes kicking around. But like we've still got the fact that mutations are called query on the request body. Like we're gonna have these kind of things kicking around forever anyway.
It's fair. Yeah, you're right.
But I've what my question was in the other direction. Like, what's the benefit?
Yes, yeah. Your question is, does it benefit a CLI to have on error null?
When I'm not a smart client, there's like no benefit in switching default, because I agree these couple of bytes, they don't really matter anyway.
So I would argue to that the benefit for non-smart clients would actually be having a default of on error halt. The majority of them do a thing like basically they look to see if there's any errors. If there's an error, then they throw. Otherwise, they read the data. So on error halt, it's actually beneficial for both that client, so it doesn't need to do that check, and the server, because it knows the first time it hits an error, it doesn't need to bother doing anything else. It can stop doing all that cascading execution. It can just stop. So having a default of on error halt would actually be beneficial for both of those. But that's also not quite what your question is.
Yeah. I think I guess it's just us that we really want to have, because we know that 99.9999999% of the GraphQL requests that will happen from a smart client in the future, and not from some IDE or a CLI or wherever. Maybe agents, we don't know that, but we'll see. But like most of them will have this on error null in it, and I guess we just look at it and say that it's not needed. It would be nicer if it's not there. But
I think a small caveat on that is like you don't even need a like smart client. You don't need a relay, right? You don't need like, I don't know, 0.5 megabyte of JavaScript to do this. Like my little throw on error library is 512 bytes and compressed. It's tiny. And that will make you a kind of a smart client, an error handling client. And we can do the same thing with like reproducing error propagation on the client. Obviously, that's different from using like window.fetch or using curl, but it's really not much more. Like a little CLI that does this could be, 2 kilobytes. It's not a big deal. But yeah, I kind of agree with you that if you want to, for your API, enable these kind of clients, and keep in mind that is a very big if, right? The premise of like the trusted documents approach is that actually we only want to allow known clients and known queries, and for them they are typically going to be your web apps, your mobile apps, that kind of thing, your desktop apps, whatever. And for those, they're all going to be smart because they already need to understand like trusted documents. They already need to understand a few things. So adding just a tiny bit of like, let's reproduce the errors client side is a very minor ask. If you know that those are the only clients your API is going to support, then now you can turn on a default behavior of having that, and you don't need those bytes in those requests. It's incredibly minor, but also, I mean, Lee will tell you that the reason that persisted queries came about was to reduce the number of bytes so that you could get it into a single packet, right?
I was literally thinking about that of like, oh no, 4 more bytes.
But
my old coworker Adam's going to kill me. He wants those bytes for application layer.
But actually, I don't know if you saw the 40,000 field query of Facebook. It's not just a couple of bytes. anymore.
Yeah, but the signature for it
90%
is
of
still
those
only
are useless.
it's the hash is just the same length.
Yep.
We need
Trusted
fragment
documents.
arguments. We need fragment arguments to reduce our operation variable length.
So doesn't that indicate what Lee said before, like that the default should be propagate, and
I think the default should be
if you
propagate. Okay.
if you
Yeah.
like if you know it's a persistent document, it's a trusted document, and you know you have only smart clients, then you could technically save those 4 bytes.
Well, we don't spec the persisted documents path in the spec. So like you could implement persisted documents kind of any way you want right now, and maybe we should change that in the future. But we could certainly make it where the on error behavior is part of what gets persisted rather than the thing that you have to send alongside of it. In fact, that probably semantically makes more sense anyway.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that because like our old persisted documents cannot have the new error propagation. But
yeah, I think like allowing
the
the default behavior to change service to service is probably not a good idea because you would want like that makes it like if you pointed an older version of GraphQL or something at a new service, like something weird could happen. And I'm sold on the argument that like the error bubbling behavior probably doesn't matter that much, except in the case that you're building a client. Like if you're an LLM who's just doing quick back and forth with a service, we probably don't care what on error behavior it's using. And if it does, then I guess it will write it in. Yeah.
I think actually for the vast majority, for the default, for cases where you don't have trusted documents, the halt in the halt case is probably the best default.
That's what a lot of, I don't know if Relay used that, but the iOS, Facebook's iOS platform basically like reverse, like client side implemented halt. Like if any error existed in the document, they'd throw the whole data away and try again.
There's only like a very small allow list of like specific errors that we don't just throw things away.
Yeah, it's essentially halt. Yeah, I'm sold that this is like dead historical bytes. That's similar to the HTTP versus HTTPS thing. It's like you just have to accept the fact that you had a thing before and you've got a new thing now. And we should probably maybe have some term in there that's like, while the field is optional, it's recommended. You should provide it. That way, we don't end up in a position where we have a bunch of clients that are omitting it. But I agree. I think like what will actually happen is that Relay, Urkel, and all the others, they will like quickly have that as the default, and you'll have to like manually put in, I'm using an old service that doesn't support this, like turn this off after some like major version bump.
Yeah. So I just want to be a little bit crisper on this, because what we're talking about here is like the request properties, but there's HTTP request properties and there's spec request properties, right? And the schema is one of the spec request properties, and you don't have to pass a schema. So I think what we're actually talking about here is when you send a request to a GraphQL service, it should contain this. But are we actually mandating that it be a part, or like highly recommending that it be part of the GraphQL request itself, or the GraphQL over HTTP request? And I think like when you talk to a different /GraphQL endpoint, you're talking to GraphQL schemas, different schemas, right? You've already changed those properties. Some of them have got new capabilities, right? Some of them have got like directives on directives or other such things. In future, maybe even new types that would also break old graphicals that don't know how to process that introspection result. So I think it is kind of okay. Like if you've got a whole completely new service to say that this one can change its default error behavior, and then just like it's not going to work with a client from before 2026 or whatever. And I'm kind of okay with that, honestly. I don't think we necessarily need this vestigial value.
Yeah, what it breaks, Benji, is like what we always said is a query from the beginning, like 2015, should work the same way on a 2026 GraphQL server.
On the same service.
And that would break it if you change the default.
Right, but you, like I've already said, you will never, once a service is established, never, ever, ever, ever change its default error behavior.
It's already an introspection query. Like I wouldn't expect that this has a different behavior. And okay, we could argue that introspection queries should not anyway break and propagate errors, but it's like I think it's just opening up the whole thing to unnecessary errors or weird behavior, where this behaves like this GraphQL endpoint has a different execution behavior than the other one.
Yeah, I think we should hard define the omission of the property means this value, which is the historical propagate. Because
and you're saying that in the GraphQL request sense, in the GraphQL spec, as opposed to the HTTP one.
In the GraphQL spec, yeah. Like here's the properties that you pass in order to run a GraphQL operation on a service. On error is one of them, and it's optional. And if omitted, this is the value that we assume that you meant by having omitted it, which is a requirement. Because there's then an entire domain of like open questions of what happens on a service when you don't submit it that goes away. And it goes away back to the current behavior of the spec, which is good. That's the sort of like minimally breaking. And then if there's something weird that you want to do, or you have like a custom HTTP thing that's like, oh, this is from a client that knows this thing where we like add in this for them automatically. Like, I don't know, that's like a last layer where it's doing the on error thing for you. I don't know, people are going to like bend the rules at the interface boundary. That's probably fine. Or like to our point earlier, all your prod is sending trusted documents, and you've decided that these are properties that you've persisted alongside the trusted document. Like, great, okay, that's not spec breaking in any way. But you're no longer in a position where, you point graphical at some arbitrary, told you that it's GraphQL endpoint, and then you're getting edge casey weird behavior where an error happened and then all of a sudden like it looks different in one tool versus another.
Yeah, I think I'm actually fully on board with that. The critical thing, and I think this came from Matt, essentially, is what you just said. It's the trusted documents. If the persisted queries capture not just the document itself, but also the error mode, so that you don't have to send this extra few bytes, I think that solves the problem. And if you're not doing that, then you don't know enough about your clients to know what the default should be. Because if you do, you should be using trusted documents. I'm on board with that.
Okay. I was going to say in the spirit of time, as we have 8 minutes left in our call, this is a very helpful conversation. Thanks, y'all. It proves once again that null is the billion-dollar problem, because we're all spending about $1 billion worth of our personal time thinking about it. Thank you, Benji, for driving discussion. I think we've got like this seems like the right direction, and now we've got dialed in, crystallized path onto what to do next. Looking real quick at, I think we have one thing left. No, we have 2 things left. We have query verb. Martin?
Yeah, very
quick. You said 2 minutes. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I can do it in 2 minutes. I don't want to discuss this too much. It's just a call, especially like this is not part of the release of the GraphQL over HTTP spec we're doing in September. So there is no rush. But if you have time after this meeting, later this week, next week, please review the pull request, because people are starting to adopt the query verb. And this is probably the next thing for GraphQL over HTTP. That's all I had. We can take that async. No need to discuss that more synchronously. We can discuss that next time. Especially, I think, Michael, you also have an item.
Yeah, I want to hand it Okay, Michael.
Yeah,
let's talk
mine
about
is also very simple. Like this was actually brought up by Martin from Apollo in 2024. Since then, we took it up every couple of meetings. It's a rename from the composite schema spec to the GraphQL Federation spec. The reason is we have worked on the spec so that it's forward compliant to Apollo Federation. Like there's a lot of federation in this spec now. And people are also talking about federated systems in the same sense. So to make this simpler from a discussion point also about the spec, we propose to rename it to GraphQL Federation. And then we have like a nice progression from the old thing was Apollo Federation. And now the thing that is under the GraphQL Foundation and is the Federation spec from the community, so to speak, is the GraphQL Federation, which we push forward in future. So all of the members of the composite schema spec are in favor of it. I also talked to Wundergraph about that. They are also fine. So I wanted to bring this up and then discuss if there is opposition here in the group against this, and otherwise get approval from the TSC.
Just to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. Okay, so this doesn't remove the concept of schema composition. It just makes that a parallel idea to federation. All right, I like that a lot. Yeah, I felt like the term schema composition was a really nice one to have introduced. And as long as we're not getting rid of that, I'm happy. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Strong support.
Awesome. I will post just for formality. I opened a discussion in the TSC repository, and I'm posting that to the TSC signal later tonight, and then we can move forward on that.
Beauty.
That's it.
Friends, somehow we always manage to end on time. We look and we say we have a big list, we have a short list, and no matter what, we always end 5 minutes around the end of the hour. I don't know how we do that. It's magic. Thanks to y'all. This has been a set of very good discussions. We've got some good next steps. For some of the async ones, please jump on those quickly. And I'll see you all pretty soon. Have a great rest of your day and evenings.
Thanks so much for the conversation, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.